Hello and welcome to today's session. I hope you're all doing amazingly well from whichever part of the world you are watching. Today, I'm speaking to those of you who want to create a wellness business. You truly believe in the value of business, of wellness, both the tangible value, the measurable value, and the intangible value. And you care deeply about doing it properly. So your intention is there and you just don't know what kind of wellness offering you need to create and how to do it. And when clients like that reach out to me and they ask me, so how can I do wellness properly? I always tell them that the success of wellness can be literally whittled down to one sentence. And that is wellness either succeeds or fails at the level it has been designed. And if it has been designed well, wellness endures in time at the level it's stewarded. So getting wellness right in terms of design is only one part of the bigger picture. The other important part is stewarding what you have created. And you need both in order to have enduring success with wellness. In other words, to create that wellness asset that attracts proud people, delivers their guests transformative experiences, and enjoys commercial sustainability for generations to come. Now, today I wanted to talk about how even the most amazing wellness concepts out there sometimes fail. And for that, I want to talk about a tool I use in with every single client of mine and also in my own business just to keep us on track. And that is what I call the Wellness Value Iceberg. And why is this Wellness Value Iceberg important? When we look at wellness in this way, we suddenly get very clear about why our wellness business would work, why it does work, and if it is not working, why it's not working. Now, if you think of the wellness value iceberg in terms of many different layers, so at the tip, then you have just below the surface, and then let's say you have the base. We could liken that to the base being, why is it that you're doing wellness? What does it mean to you to do wellness successfully? And that is your bottom layer. And then just below the surface, just above the bottom layer of the iceberg, and that is just below the surface of the water. Once you're clear about why you're doing what you're doing, the next layer is how are you going to make that impact? What container, what vehicle would you need? Do you need a full-blown wellness resort? Or do you want a hotel with a small wellness offering? Or do you want to create a clinic, etc., etc.? And that sits just above the purpose element. How do you want to make that impact? How do you want to achieve your purpose? And once you're clear on the how you're going to do that, it becomes a lot easier to identify what elements, what individual elements do you need in your wellness offering. So if we go back to our value iceberg, at the base, you have the purpose. Your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And just above the base, and that is below the waterline, it's how do you want to make that impact? based on your purpose. And once you're clear about how you're going to do that impact, how you're going to make that impact, what is that going to look like, you then start focusing at the tip of the iceberg, which is the individual elements. Do you want a cryotherapy chamber? Do you want a hyperbaric room? Do you want snow rooms? What is it that you want? Those are the individual elements. And that is the tip of the iceberg. Now, why wellness fails and in other instances succeeds is that we get it all wrong. So instead of starting with our why and thinking about how we're going to deliver that why, and then lastly identifying the what, in our businesses, we end up thinking, what exactly do I need, the blink, to stand out? And once we think we know what we want, what the individual wellness elements are, we start to ask ourselves, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work? And rarely do we ask about why. And that is no wonder the vast majority of wellness concepts do not succeed or they do not endure over time because they have been literally built on their individual elements of wellness. And very rarely do they actually go deeper into how they're going to use those individual tools. And even less do they consider about why they're doing what they're doing. And wellness at the end of the day, it's not like other business models. Whenever we want to enter into the wellness arena, we're fundamentally changing the well-being of our guests, or we impact them directly through our services, through our offering, through our messaging. That is what makes the impact. So it does matter why we're doing what we're doing. So when you're trying to build your wellness offering, what doesn't serve is starting at the tip of the iceberg. The what? What individual elements am I going to need? Spa, wellness offering, visiting practitioners. When we start off with that what we do is we end up sitting on the tip of the iceberg. And we all know the tip of the iceberg is the part where we are faced by the most harsh weather conditions. And it's at the tip of the iceberg that we get our backsides kicked in when there is any market change. Here is where we risk to lose our entire business model because we have tied it to an individual element, to the tool that we need to deliver our true purpose. But here's what happens when you actually want to go below the surface of the water and you start asking, how can I impact the well-being of my guests? Not only while they are here with us, but long before they even get to our facilities, to long after they leave. And once you're clear with that how, the only way you get that level of clarity is through the base, your why, your true purpose. So when you're building your wellness value iceberg, start with why you're doing what you're doing. That is what's going to anchor you. And that is what's going to help you align with the kind of clients that light you up and who you want to work with. Because the beauty of living in today's day and age is that there is no playbook out there when it comes to wellness. And what works for me might not work for you. And what works in one destination might not work in another. And that's a beautiful thing. But with that level of creative agency, we also need to implement some form of purpose led business thinking. And here is when we step back and think, why exactly am I implementing a wellness offering? What does it mean to me? And if it were successful, what would success look like? And once you're clear with your why, your deep purpose, you then move to how do I want my ideal guests to feel? What kind of transformation am I bringing to their life? And once you're clear about how you want your ideal client or guest or customer to feel, you're then able to identify the individual elements. But when you are looking at value iceberg thinking, if you want to move the entire iceberg, you need to start with the base, your why. And the rest just falls into place. But here's the interesting thing. Despite wanting to do wellness properly, when we are new to the game, we think that good intention on its own will help us make a success out of our wellness business. And there is no business out there in the world that works that way. So when we start looking at individual elements we can add, we're actually getting to the tip of the iceberg, where we're hit the hardest by external stormy conditions, market changes, but where we make hardly any impact to the value we're producing in wellness. So when we're creating our wellness assets, instead of starting with the what, then looking at how we're going to do it, and then considering why if we do, the way you ensure that you have designed a wellness offering that succeeds is anchoring it to your purpose. Why is it that you're doing wellness, and why in this specific way? And then once you've answered your purpose, the next layer up is about executing on that purpose. How do you want people to feel? How are you going to deliver that impact? And note, we're not going into the nitty gritty of what services or individual elements your wellness offering is going to have. In two stages of the value iceberg, we're talking about purpose and we're talking about how do you want to make that purpose? How do you want to achieve that ultimate goal? And those are things that happen below the surface. It's your why you're doing it and how, the obstacles you might face. How are you going to see this past the finish line in the good days and the bad days? And then only should you be focusing on what are the individual elements that I need to add. And when you're adding new individual wellness elements based on why you're doing what you're doing, how you want to make that impact, it becomes so much easier to be very selective about what individual elements you are going to add into your wellness facility. So for those of you who want to do wellness properly, think about your why, your true purpose, that base of the iceberg. That is what's going to move you forward. That is what's going to differentiate you in the market. That is what's going to create a loyal fan base of guests who rave about the experiences and return year after year, day after day, month after month. So start with why. Why are you in this particular business? Who is it that you want to serve? And how do you want them to feel? And once you're clear on that, you can then actually see the implementation process. See what's working, what isn't working, what can you do differently? And the things that you can do differently, implementing them too to see the results. Until eventually you can be that consultant who's running several projects at the same go. Or you can be a wellness owner, an owner of a wellness business that is making a huge impact in the industry, your end user. So when you're working on creating your wellness concept, always think about the why first. Then how are you going to make people feel? And then at last, you think about what are the individual wellness elements you need. It's not the other way around. You do not go and look around and see what is the best trend in your eyes. Who is the trendiest persona? And then from there, thinking, okay, how could I do wellness using what I have? And you just completely bypass purpose. And purpose is what ensures that we show up every day and we deliver our best. When whatever we're creating is anchored on real value, its growth is exponential. So today, I just wanted to quickly drop on here to explain why it's so important to design your wellness offering coherently from the start. And once you've got that values ecosystem dialed in, and you've also got your entire wellness concept, the next step is then to ensure that you're stewarding wellness the way it's meant to, that you're being responsible with your wellness business. Now, I also want to highlight that being responsible does not mean that your business is not making profits. You can do you can do the wellness business incredibly intentionally and well and still make money on that. So those notions aren't mutually exclusive. So if you're looking to create that wellness business, be you a wellness consultant or an owner of a boutique property, stop and ask yourself, am I at the tip of the iceberg where I'm making the least impact? Or am I moving myself to the base? And there, thinking, why is it that I want to do wellness? And how do I want to make that impact? So this is the learning for you. Stay off the tip of the iceberg and get to the base. Connect with your purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because when you're clear with your why, implementing your wellness concept becomes a lot easier. Because inevitably, anything new that you are implementing, you will go through a learning curve. You will go through the valley of despair and into your river of misery before you can actually get to man transformation. And part of entering that valley of despair, part of being in your river of misery, is always making sure that you're starting with your why, then how, you want people to feel. And then, and only then, do you start choosing the individual wellness elements. It's never the other way around. You don't choose your wellness elements and then from there define your concept. Your concept comes first based on what you want, your values ecosystem. And then the implementation comes next. So, my wellness leader friends, remember we're starting off with the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? How do we want our guests to feel? And lastly, what individual elements we need. It's never what do we need, then how we're going to do it, and then completely forgetting why you're in it. And on that thought provoking note, I wish you all a beautiful day ahead. Take care now.